Hey YouTube, how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. My name is JC and this is the Cuban Redneck DIY channel where we do cooking and grilling on Tuesdays, DIY stuff on Fridays. I have a quick announcement to make. We now have two dedicated playlists to food recipes, one for Caribbean dishes, one for Cuban dishes. Let's just, it looks like everybody wants to stay in their corner. I have no problem with that. Also, if you're here looking for DIY stuff, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like YouTube is feeding the DIY guys recipes and the recipe people DIY stuff. Not 100% sure, not on me, that's all on YouTube. Nevertheless, know that there are multiple dedicated playlists to everything DIY on the channel. With that said, let's talk about today's video. And if this is your first time here, do me a favor, man. Feed the algorithms, share, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. I'm really not picky. But I just refuse to make videos about stupid kids eating cinnamon, and so I rely on you guys to help me grow the channel. Today's recipe is a pudding, a bread pudding. Here we have some wheat bread, and if you're easily triggered, I suggest you click the back button and go watch CNN or MSNBC or any of those tabloids, because some people are going to get triggered, and that is because this bread pudding, it's going to be somewhat, it's going to look somewhere traditional what a Cuban bread pudding looks like. However, we're going to break every rules. That's what we do here. And as of late, a lot of people have been getting triggered every time that I deviate 1 inch from what is supposed to be or what CNN says is supposed to be true. With that said, I challenge you to try this recipe because you're going to become a hero. Trust me when I say this is going to be the best bread pudding you have ever made. This comes to me, or this comes to you, thanks to an old friend of mine who ran for many years a Cuban bakery in Little Havana. And this is kind of like his secret recipe. One of the things we're going to be doing outside of using all bread, we're going to be using this fruit mix thing. This is very popular throughout the Caribbean, and this is my input into the recipe. This is done very popular in Jamaica and Trinidad with something called fruit cake, or fruit bread I should say, or sweet bread, rum cake, all of those holiday Caribbean cakes and breads and things like that seem to have this dried fruit, very similar to I forgot what the American one is. I think it's called fruit cake. I don't know. Little dried fruit, nothing out of this world. We're going to be adding this aside from raisins. I don't have any Grand Marnier, and I should run to the store and get some. But it is Saturday afternoon out here in Southwest Florida. Got a bunch of people coming for lunch tomorrow. And I think we'll do it without liquor. But if you have some Grand Marnier, about a quarter cup, or half a cup actually, if you really like to kick it up, will be ideal. Check this out. Okay, so we have a few things to discuss, but before we go there, let's talk about the ingredients for a bread pudding recipe. First, we're gonna need a loaf of Cuban bread. I guess French or baguette will do. I ended up using a baguette just because I cannot get Cuban bread near me, and that's one of the things we're gonna discuss. We're also gonna need 5 egg yolks. We're gonna need 1 can of sweet condensed milk, 1 can of evaporated milk, 1 splash of vanilla, 1 pinch of salt, a quarter cup of fruit cake mix, and that is I guess optional, but I do believe this gives the pudding an excellent texture. We're also going to need a quarter cup of raisins, that is pretty much the standard, and 1 cup of sugar for our dry caramel. Now let's talk about our bread pudding sauce. Now if you're into baking, you may recognize this. This is just a modified version of a sticky bun sauce. For that, we're going to need 1 stick of butter, a half a cup of white sugar, a half a cup of brown sugar, a half a cup of heavy whipping cream, a half a cup of water, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And please watch the video for instructions. The first thing we need to discuss before you guys call me out or give me a thumbs down is liqueur. It is quite customary on my side of the woods to add some kind of liquor to the bread pudding, usually in the form of a spiced rum or something like that. However, after trying just about everything under the kitchen sink, I have found that there isn't nothing that even comes close to Grand Marnier. If you're not familiar with this, it is an addictive orange liqueur. Not cheap, but quite good. About a quarter cup will suffice, but make sure to add it to your mixture last so it doesn't cook the eggs. It may separate if you add it before. If you want to magnify the liquor taste, consider adding a little bit to your bread pudding sauce. With that said, let's talk about bread. I have no idea what's gotten into my Cuban people, especially those on YouTube, but Cuban bread pudding with white sliced bread is a no-no. The result is a dense pudding that is not appetizing at all. Cuban bread, French bread, even baguette on the other hand, have these air pockets that allows for a moist and more appetizing pudding. If you can't get Cuban bread, consider French. A baguette would work, but I ended up with a pudding that was a little bit more dense than I'd rather have. We're going to start our bread pudding by rinsing our fruitcake mix and raisins. It will be much easier to sprinkle them without the sticky syrup they come with. Now, if you're going to be adding liquor to your bread pudding, consider soaking them in liquor for about an hour instead. The next step in the preparation is to cut up bread into jumbo-sized breadcrumbs. Between 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch is ideal. While working at the restaurant industry, we used to buy plain, unseasoned jumbo croutons for this type of recipes, but I have not seen them at a local grocery store for some time. With that out of the way, we can proceed to separating our eggs. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that I prefer that in between the fingers method, but feel free to use whatever method you're more comfortable with. After all we're doing is separating egg yolks and whites. After setting the egg whites aside, we can get started with our bread pudding filling by mixing 1 can of sweet condensed milk, 1 can of evaporated milk, to that we're going to add a pinch of salt, followed by a splash of vanilla, and a cup of whole milk, which I almost left out. Note that the original recipe calls for whipping cream, but I didn't have any, so I cheated and used whole milk. Mix everything well and set it aside. Next is our caramel, but before we go there, let's talk about mold. There are dedicated bread pudding molds out there. They're often called a steam pudding mold. They usually range for anywhere from between $20 to a couple of $100. I make one of these, I don't know, every 2-3 times a year, so I don't see a point to having a dedicated mold. I will be using a ceramic one instead. These ones can be a hit and miss since they have a tendency for sticking. So let's just hope for the best and get going with our caramel, which is nothing more than a dry caramel like you will make for flan or anything like that. Basically, add a cup of sugar to a non-stick pan, put it on the stove over low heat, and wait for the sugar to melt. You need to shake it every once in a while, and that's about it. After letting the caramel cool down for a little bit, we can proceed with the soaking of the bread. I like to put down an even layer at the bottom, then sprinkle a little bit of fruit and raisins, followed by another layer of bread, and then another layer of fruit. We can then add the filling. More than likely your bread is going to try to float. Just let it sit and soak. After 15 to 20 minutes, it's going to look something like this, at which time we're going to make sure that everything is wet without compressing. Cover our mold with a piece of foil. I like to put an oven safe lid on top just to make sure the foil doesn't pop up with the steam. We're going to place that into a larger pot that is going to serve as a bain-marie. Fill that halfway with water. Then we're going to place that into a preheated 400-degree oven for 50 minutes. At which time, we're going to check and make sure that our custard has set, and if everything looks good, take it out of the water bath and let it stay at room temperature. After just 20 or 30 minutes, I started feeling somewhat insecure about my mold, and I was concerned that it was going to stick. So I went ahead and flipped it, although it was still quite hot, and let it cool the rest of the way upside down. A couple of hours later, it is time for the moment of truth. Alright, that looks awesome and it smells awesome as well. Now all we need to do is make our pudding sauce. For the bread pudding sauce, all we're going to do is melt a stick of butter over medium heat. To this we're going to add a half a cup of brown sugar, followed by a half a cup of white sugar, and as the butter starts to dissolve, we're going to add a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. Look for bubbles, and as the mixture starts to come to a boil, take it off the heat, add a tablespoon of vanilla extract and a half a cup of water. Stir and pour over your bread pudding. Bust out a knife and have at it. A nice scoop of Bluebell homemade vanilla would truly complete this awesome bread pudding, but as they say, there is always tomorrow. My friends, my name is JC and this is the Cuban Redneck DIY channel. I thank you for watching and I look forward to seeing you next week. Please support this channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. Thank you.